بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and peace be upon you all. Welcome. The topic I have for today is mental rigidity. One of the things that I always like to remind people of is that a sign of psychological health and a sign that your well-being is intact, one of the signs, there's many signs, but one of the signs that your well-being is intact is that you have a sense, or you have the ability to be flexible mentally. And so a sign of psychological health is mental flexibility, so psychological flexibility. And a sign that you're not doing so well psychologically is mental rigidity, okay? And I want to go over that today because a lot of people don't recognize when they are engaging in patterns of rigidity and patterns where they basically become a prisoner in their own mind. Okay? Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much. So today I want to focus on some of the signs of mental rigidity and what it means to be mentally flexible. At least we'll start this topic, inshallah. If we don't finish it today, we'll continue next week. But basically, in psychology, mental rigidity, it refers to this really obstinate inability to adapt or to be flexible towards other people's or accepting towards situations that happens in your life, but also other people's views. And so there's many ways in which mental rigidity comes up in people's lives. A lot of times it's a response to trauma and how people cope with their circumstances after going through traumatic events. It's the mind's way of keeping you safe. And I put safe in quotations because you've defined for yourself what safety looks like. And then you tell yourself, I have to stay within these set of rules for me to feel safe. And so many people don't realize that they are struggling and they are suffering because of their mental rigidity patterns. These really strict rules that they set for themselves. Nobody set it for them, but they're setting it for themselves. And again, part of that is trauma, part of that is past experiences, things that you've learned, how you've interpreted different experiences in your life. Let's say you were hurt, okay, then you evaluate what caused me to get hurt. 1 + 1 = 2. So you take that formula, you apply it to another situation where it doesn't apply. And so a lot of people use their mind in a way that actually causes more pain in their lives. And so again, a sign of psychological health is mental flexibility, your ability to adapt, your ability to apply different rules to different situations, your ability to be flexible. It doesn't always have to be this way. Now, what should always remain consistent is your values. And I think people confuse rules and values. Your values are your anchoring foundations. And Islam provides us with a set of values that we have to be anchored in. Truthfulness, right? Sidq, tawheed. These are all values that no one is a partner to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that we don't give anything the same value as Allah. Honesty, integrity, so many values that we have in Islam, and throughout the teachings of the Quran and Sunnah, we are constantly being taught about the best values that we should embody. But outside of that, beyond that, people create these rules for themselves throughout life that they think keeps them safe, that they think keeps them happy, that they have attached to their definition of what perfection looks like, or what success looks like, or what happiness looks like. So throughout your life, you're creating these definitions for yourself. You're creating these formulas for yourself. And if you're not assessing these things, you can be chasing the wrong ideas. You could be chasing an illusion. You could be chasing false ideas of what success looks like, of what happiness looks like. You could be chasing things that actually do not serve you. And so people, for example, have this ideal image of themselves. One of the ways that people become mentally rigid is that they create for themselves this very rigid idea of what their ideal self should look like. So maybe for one person, they said, oh, this is the version of myself I need to be loved, to be accepted, to not be rejected, to not be hurt again. And so they say, what does this person need to have? They need to be this and this and this, and they create these rules, right? And a lot of times these rules are not really rooted in what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from you. So you're burdening yourself more than Allah has asked you to bear, but you're creating these additional rules. Allah has told you what He wanted from you, and you're saying, no, I need to be this. And if I'm not this at all, or if I'm even, if this version of me is not something that if any aspect of this version of myself is tweaked, then I'm not good enough. I don't deserve love. I don't fit in. You start really talking to yourself in a harsh way. So people can be mentally rigid with their definition of who they think they should be. And as you're listening to me, I want you to think about this. Who is this ideal person that you think you need to be loved, to be successful, to be accepted, to be whatever you think are the things that you should be achieving in life? And then ask yourself, does that actually match what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from me? Or does that match the standard that I think people will be happy with? Is it centered around people, or is it centered around my Creator? Is it centered around the creation, or is it centered around the Creator? So a lot of us are at the mercy of our own mind and the set of rules that we have established for ourselves, and that creates misery. And this is why I talk about in my H.O.M.E method the importance of humbling this mind and not leading from this mind. That you have a higher intellect. When I said assess that ideal image and then filter it through that Islamic lens, that's what the intellect of the heart is for. And the heart says, no, that doesn't match what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taught us. That doesn't match what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said about Himself, has said about my path, has said about what my values should be. So a lot of times you're trying to be something in a very rigid way that attaches more to dunya standards, not akhirah standards. And this is what's happening to so many people. Today we live in a time where people are extremely burnt out. They are burnt out. They are fried. And sometimes when you break it down and you assess what are these things that are causing them to be so fried mentally, it's they're chasing things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never asked them to chase. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never told them that this is going to be what He's going to judge you for. But they've set these rigid rules for themselves. If I don't achieve this, I'm not happy. If I don't get this by a certain time, I'm not happy. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. If this timeline for my life does not match my timeline, then I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. And so people are literally living at the mercy of their own rules that they have set for themselves. And this is why I always tell people in sujood, when you humble this mind, remember that you're also humbling your own plans for yourself. All these rules that you've set for yourself, all this rigidity that you've set for yourself. Release it to Allah and say, Ya Allah, your values for me are what is most important. Your plan for me is what is most important. Your truths are what are most important to me. And help me break free from the prison of my own mind. Today, people's struggles are very much centered around how they've understood the brain, because we live in a society that centers everything around the brain and gives the brain an unhealthy place in our inner world that it wasn't designed. This is one of the reasons that led to the development of the heart over mind and ego method, that I saw people suffering because they put this in a place that Allah did not ask us to place it. Where every thought they have is true. No, who said that? Who said every thought you have is true? You have tons of thoughts daily. It's an experience for you, it's a real thought, but doesn't mean it's true. Doesn't mean it's aligned with truth. You could have the most, you could have any thought about God, about yourself, about others. It doesn't mean that it's true. About what your future holds. It doesn't mean that it's true. It doesn't mean that that's what Allah has decreed for you. But if you treat this as the lead of you and not this higher intellect, your heart, guess what? You're going to believe everything that this comes back to you with. And this is why sujood is so important, why it's so important to be present in sujood. Because as you are in sujood and you increase your presence in sujood, you are really connected to how, as I humble this mind, I am releasing all the things that are not true, all the rigidity, all the things that do not align with you, Ya Allah. And you can make this dua. This is a dua I always love to make, is Ya Allah, please align me mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically with what is pleasing to you. And with your haqq, with truth. And so I want you to assess as you're listening to me how you have become a prisoner of your own mind. Another way that we do this is the expectations that we have for ourselves and others. People today suffer because they are at the mercy, their emotions are at the mercy of their expectations of other people. If this person does not do this, they don't love me. If this person does not show up in this specific way, you see the rigidity? They do not love me. You see how it's so absolute? This is one of the signs of mental rigidity. You create these absolute formulas. One, even in relationships, 1 + 1 = 2. Person does this, it equals this. I feel this. Okay, but then you're placing that rigid expectation on someone else. And is that fair to them? That you place that rigid expectation on them? And you've attached it so directly to your sense of worth and to your sense of being loved. Now let's say that person doesn't show up in that specific way you've identified. And here you are thinking, you're attributing now not loving you to that person. And they really love you. That person could really have a lot of love for you. But they didn't show up in that specific way. And you're attributing that to them. Because you've created a rigid formula. And that rigid formula could be anchored in past situations where someone might have hurt you. Someone might have treated you badly. And you've said, okay, well, I never want to be here again. So in order to avoid being here again, this is what I need. And then you define the lines very rigidly. And then anything that looks different than that, it's chaos for you. Now, don't get me wrong. You're allowed to have expectations in your relationships. When you start a new job, there's expectations. The boss, the supervisor has an expectation of you, and you have expectations of what the job also offers you, right? So it's normal to have expectations. But a lot of times our expectations are rigid and go beyond what is really expected in that situation, or what is normal, what aligns with all the different, because everything also depends on the context, right? So a lot of times people don't realize that their sadness, their misery, their heaviness is due to how they've mentally framed their view of themselves, how they've mentally framed their life, how they've mentally framed their expectations, and even of yourself. One of the signs of mental rigidity is extreme harshness with yourself. You have a very set idea of who you should be and what you should be doing and how you should show up in specific situations, that if it looks any different, even though the context has changed, even though the situation has changed, you still expect yourself to be a certain way. And anytime you step outside of that, you beat yourself up. You bully yourself. You start speaking to yourself in ways you would not speak to another person, forgetting that you are Allah's creation too, and you should not be speaking to yourself this way. So anytime you find yourself being excessively harsh, anytime you find yourself being going into this mode of excessively expecting certain things from people all the time, and if they don't match that expectation, you get mad at them, or look for your patterns. Your patterns of behavior is data for you. If you want to truly grow, you got to look at your patterns of behavior as data that Allah is giving you about yourself and how you show up, how you interpret experiences, how you view yourself, how you view Allah. Allah's giving you data constantly. Those times where you're triggered, if you keep reacting the same way, that's data for you. Why is it that I keep reacting this specific way when I don't get the expectation that I had? Okay, that's data. Look at that. What does this expectation mean for me personally? When someone doesn't meet this expectation, or I don't meet this expectation for myself, how am I interpreting it for me? How am I interpreting myself in this situation? A lot of times people don't realize that their pain doesn't come so much from what happens to them, but more from how they are viewing themselves and interpreting themselves as they're going through it. So let's go to the example of you had a certain expectation for your life and the timeline of your life. And this should have happened, or this should happen by this time, and I should have this lined up, and I should have this, and this is the life that I expected. And you start grieving that life because it doesn't look like the way that you thought it would. People don't realize that you also grieve the life you thought you would have. It's not just the life that you once had, let's say, and you lost. No, a lot of people today, they are grieving the life they thought they would have by a certain time in their life. And then there's a sadness that settles in the heart because in their mind, they have defined already what their life should look like. And you're scanning, and the mind's view or definition doesn't match real life. So sadness settles in our heart because you've interpreted as, my life needs to look like this for me to feel worthy, for me to feel happy, for me to feel good enough, for me to be whole. And so many people are experiencing this today in different ways. Whether they didn't have the career that they thought they would have, whether they don't have the relationships they thought they would have, whether they feel like they keep failing at something they didn't think they'd keep failing at, they thought they would have succeeded at by a certain time. So everybody has certain areas that they thought they would achieve, or they have a certain vision for their life that they thought they would achieve or have. And you could try this exercise. Those days when you feel sad because your life doesn't look like the way that your mind has defined it for you. Number one, remember that your mind is not your Rabb. Your mind is not your Lord. Your mind is not your creator. This is why you humble it, okay? So that's number one. And in sujood, you practice, because again, I really like to emphasize application, because it's not enough that we just absorb. We have to apply what we know in order for our hearts to experience the fruits of that. So you know now that you're, okay, so what? I have this mental vision for myself. It doesn't, okay, I look around, it doesn't match what my mind, my life doesn't match what my mind is telling me I should have. Because your mind creates all these shoulds and musts. It has this, it tends to do that, right? This is part of like creating rules for yourself. A lot of people create shoulds and musts. Even that language sounds very, right? Absolute. You should be doing this. And there are shoulds and musts, don't get me wrong. There are shoulds and musts in life. And who gets to decide the shoulds and musts? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So outside of that, yes, you can create shoulds and musts if it really aligns with your values. But a lot of times it doesn't really align with your values. It just aligns with your nafs's attachment to being worthy through specific means. Does that make sense? So a lot of people, it's hard for people to let go of that, because what does that say about me if I accept this? And this is really what people ask, is that like, what does this say about me that I have not achieved this? What does this say about me? It's very me-centered, by the way. It's not God-centered. When you don't arrive at a specific destination, or you don't arrive at the life that you thought you would have, or achievements that you thought you would have, and you say to yourself, what does that say about me that I have not achieved this, or that my life doesn't look like this? Who are you centering around? Yourself. Your plan for yourself, your vision for yourself. Me, 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 me. And you become a prisoner of your nafs that way, your lower self, you become a prisoner of it. It has defined for you, because by the way, and I mentioned this in my H.O.M.E method, that the nafs bullies the mind. So the mind comes back, 1 plus 1 equals 2, because the mind only processes what it has information about. Comes back and says, okay, well, this doesn't match the life, we thought we would have in the mind. Or let's say you're in a situation and you're going through a struggle and you're looking for a solution. Your mind processes. It looks for a solution, right? And then it comes back to you. Okay, 1 plus 1 equals 2. We don't have a solution. Meaning, like, it did the formula, did the calculating, comes back to you, no solution. The nafs doesn't like this. The nafs does not like uncertainty. So what does it do? It bullies the mind. It says, think again. Process again. No. Find a way. Come back to us with something. The nafs does not like this. So it burdens your faculties. Your lower self does not like discomfort. And one of the greatest discomforts of the lower self is uncertainty. So it bullies the mind to process and process and process. And this is where people feel burdened. This is what keeps people up at night, right? Is that they're constantly trying to use this mind or abuse this mind to figure out a solution to something that Allah did not create a solution for you yet. Or to create a plan that perhaps Allah has not planned for you. So it's really important to understand the place that this mind should be. It's a powerful tool. The brain is remarkable. It's miraculous. I've talked about it before. I can't imagine anyone studying the brain and not believing that there's a creator. Because until today, they're still discovering new things about the brain. But even then, despite it being such a miraculous tool, advanced tool that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has equipped us with, we still have to humble it. And we still have to put it in its place, because it was never designed to be your Lord. It was never designed to be the final authority of who you are and what your life should look like. And it was never designed to be the destination. This is why we humble it at the end of every rak'ah. Because you remind yourself that I have a destination, I have a Lord. So the first thing that you're going to do, if you feel like your life doesn't look the way that your mind has strictly laid out for you, is that number one, you humble this mind in sujood. And you remember that it has a Lord, and you say, Ya Allah, I submit to your plan. Even if you don't believe it yet, even if you don't feel it yet, say it. Because words matter. And eventually, it is going to be a belief in your heart. So say it. I submit to your plan. And if you feel like you're resisting to it, ask Allah to help you actually let it be an experience in your heart. You don't realize that the more you hold on to your rigid definitions for yourself of what makes you worthy and makes you good enough, you don't realize that it causes you more pain. And you think, oh, I can't let go of this. I can't let go of this. This is what the nafs does. This is back to what I was saying about the nafs. The nafs makes you hold on because it's so afraid of discomfort. But whenever you let go of something into Allah's hands, you may feel fear initially, but that fear is followed by relief. Whereas if you hold on to your own rigid ideas of what your life should look like, and you hold on to comfort, you might not feel fear, because your nafs doesn't want that. It's protecting you from that, right? It's saying, let's not feel fear. We don't need to let go of anything yet. Please don't let go. Please don't let go, right? Hold on. Yeah, so you might stay comfortable, but it's followed by long-term suffering. So you're always choosing some kind of pain in life. Whether you want to change, be freer, be more flexible mentally in life, be more resilient. That's also a trait of resilience, is that flexibility, you're able to adapt. Whether you want to change, grow, align with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, become the person that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you to be, live up to your potential, be the best version of yourself. Whether you want to do that or you want to stay the same, please don't forget that you're still choosing pain. And a lot of people don't know this, or they don't think about this. They think, oh, I'm staying the same. How am I choosing pain? I'm comfortable like this. I'm good. Don't bother me. I'm good, right? No, you're still choosing pain and you're choosing worse pain. So change, growth, elevation, you leveling up, your glow up, what you guys are saying these days, your glow up also requires pain. But this pain is followed by long-term gain, relief, inner freedom, peace, alignment. You're not chained anymore to all these illusions of who you think you should be and what your life should look like. You're more free-flowing. This one, you might not feel pain initially, and you get comfort, but it's followed by long-term suffering. There's the pain of change, and there's the pain of staying the same. There's the pain of doing the work, facing your fears, the work of letting go, and there's the pain of staying stuck in your rigid expectations for yourself, for others, for your life. So you're choosing pain either way. And at some point, and by the way, this doesn't just apply to expectations for yourself or life. It even applies to your expectations for yourself in terms of personal goals that you have. We all have these personal goals that we want to achieve that we know would be good for us if I did this, or if I changed this, or if I did the work on this, right? And a lot of people avoid that because it's too heavy. It's too hard. Discomfort is hard for the nafs. But you're still choosing pain. The pain of staying the same is so hard. Actually, I think one of the greatest things that people grieve in life is the pain of unlived potential, of never really seeing who they could be if they submitted to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, first and foremost. Meaning that there's the pain of unlived potential, first and foremost, that comes when we don't submit fully to Allah. A lot of people have one foot in, one foot out. And they never really get to see their potential. They have one foot in the deen, the way of life that God has prescribed, and one foot out. Let me pick and choose. Let me take what makes me feel good. But as soon as God talks about something that's going to require me to be uncomfortable, let's leave that. I'll get to you later. Stay there, right? But you know what? You're robbing yourself because you never get to see who Allah will mold you to be when you fully submit to Him. When you fully surrender. When you say, Ya Allah, you said this, I follow it, I obey. Ya Allah, you said prayers are most important. Let me see what kind of person I become when I center my day around my prayers. When I get up to pray right after the adhan, because I know that's the most beloved deed to you, Ya Allah. So a lot of people don't get to see who they get to be when they submit fully to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Secondly, a lot of people don't get to see who they get to be when they tame their nafs and they face the discomfort of change and pursuit of their goals and the work that they need to do to become better, to heal, to grow, to change, to become joyful, to become more peaceful, to have different reactions in life. Yes, it's very easy to stay and have the same reactions to all your experiences. You could stay and react in the same way, and that gives you release in the moment, right? Because that's why people continue to engage in patterns of reactions that are unhelpful, right? Is that it gives you something in the moment. The nafs is attached to that immediate release. Why are people reactive constantly and it's hard to break that cycle? Let's say somebody who has a negative reaction to conflict or to who becomes very reactive easily. Why do people continue to do it if it's so horrible? Because the nafs gets something out of it. It's like, please, let's release all this tension. So let's react in whatever way we need to so I could release this anger in whatever way I need to. The nafs doesn't like discomfort. So you're getting something out of your patterns, by the way. Don't forget that. You get something out of staying the same. You get comfort. You get immediate gratification. So just always assess that. What am I getting out of it that's making it hard for me to break this cycle? So, you don't really get to see your potential when you don't do the work, when you don't do the hard stuff. And a lot of people don't want to do hard things these days. They want everything easy. They want to have no sacrifices. They want to make no sacrifices, but then they want to get everything. And I'm sure you hear these messages, right? People like, I want this and this and this and this. Okay, but are you willing to do this? No. It's too hard. This applies, I can give you so many examples of this, like people who have a certain goal. Oh, I want this, I want to be this person. But then day to day, they're not actually doing anything to become that person. People want to be in a relationship, they want to get married, but marriage requires sacrifice. This is something we have to learn from the previous generation. See, a lot of times we focus on, all the bad things or all the negative things that the previous generations have done, but we don't focus on the good things, which they understood the meaning of sacrifice to have healthy marriages. Huh? They do too much. Yeah, I mean, we have always something to learn from every generation. But why is there a marriage crisis? A lot of people are not willing to sacrifice. A lot of people are not willing to commit, which requires sacrifice, responsibility. Whatever goal, it really requires that you face discomfort in your life. And so always tell yourself this: I could stay the same, and I could stay in this prison of my mind of what my life should look like, or these rigid expectations that I have for myself. Part of rigid expectations too is that sometimes the rigid expectations is that I don't need to do any work to get what I want. People think they're entitled. Really, this is people are becoming rigidly entitled, where they actually think that they're entitled to ease all the time, and that's a rule that they've set for themselves. It should always be easy. And people say these things. Oh, if things go hard, it's a sign that, if things get hard, it's a sign that you're not supposed to be doing it. Who the heck said that? People say these things as if really they should expect ease all the time. And if anything becomes uncomfortable, it's like I need to quit or give up or. And this is why, again, back to the relationships, why one of the reasons divorce is on the rise is because people get married with this rigid idea of what a marriage should look like. And the second things get hard, people are like, oh, this isn't for me. And same thing with any of the goals. People quit. They start a goal, they make a little progress, everything is fine. The second they have a setback, oh no, I quit. They're doing community work. Everything is great when things are easy. The second they have a setback, oh no, I quit. This isn't for me. So look out for these patterns where you avoid what is difficult, where you avoid discomfort so you could stay where you are and you could stay safe. Or the illusion of safety that your brain, the rigid definition of safety that your brain has created for itself. And if you treat the mind as the lead of you, that's what you're going to submit to. I know my mind says this is not good. But remember, Islam teaches us that we have a higher intellect. This, what I call this superior navigation system. And this mind is the servant of the heart. So it doesn't end with your thoughts or your perceptions of what, or your interpretations. You have to filter you have to filter your mental processes through a greater lens, the lens of your heart. This is given that you're anchoring this heart in the one who created it. That you're centering this heart around Al-Haqq himself, the one who has named himself the truth. You can't center this heart around your desires and then say, I'm following my heart. No. But it doesn't end with what your mind brings back to you. You always have to take your mind and humble it to Allah and ask for guidance and filter it through this greater lens that is supposed to be anchored in Allah's words. We talked about this right before, about how we need an anchoring in God's words daily, because if Allah's words are not your anchor, the words of the world, the narratives that you have for yourself, all the thoughts that your mind brings back to you, that's going to be the greatest force within you. But if you're anchored in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in His prescriptions, in His words, in what He has called you to, they will override the unhealthy narratives, the unhealthy influences, all the messages, all the rigid definitions that we have for ourselves, or the rigid expectations that don't align with Allah's values. Okay. Oh, wow. I keep looking at that and I realize wrong time. Okay. I guess that will be our cue. Yeah. Yeah, we'll stop here. So we'll stop here, inshallah. Allahumma salli ala